morning. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the conference of the European project Blockchain for Decent Work. I welcome all those that are sitting here in this room and those that are following remotely via Zoom and those that are following us through Facebook, thanks to the live feed from Collettiva. And I'd also like to thank the technical staff, Marco Disola, Agostino, Marcano Mauro from Collettiva, and all the interpreters that make this conference possible. This conference that has been organized in a mixed modality, both in presence and remotely. And it is a multi-language conference. We are speaking in English. We also have translations in English and Spanish. Today we'll talk about the blockchain technology, the fields of implementation in the labor market. These are many different kind of sectors. We'll talk about risks and opportunities for the workers, and we'll talk about the challenges that the new technological innovations can pose to the trade union. We'll do this from here, from Isola. This is a place that was established in November 2021 thanks to an initiative of a group of boys from Catania. This is a very interesting new group that was created here in Catania in Sicily, and it's something really new and innovative for Sicily. And in this hub that's hosting innovative startups and spaces for co-working, lots of the young workers and startup workers come here to work. And it's also very innovative because it's a community. It's a community that has established itself on the territory and has attempted to launch as well an idea of a development here in Sicily that attempts to empower the best energies of Sicily. I'm not talking about solar energy or wind energy. I'm talking about the energy that's within the many women and men that belong to this land, that have seen their opportunities denied for so long. Before starting to talk about the specific projects of today, allow me to thank Alfio Mannino, General Secretary of CGIO Sicily, and all CGIO Sicily that has welcomed our request to organize this conference here in Sicily. I would also like to thank Tania Scacchetti. She's following us remotely. She had to be here today physically, but unfortunately she wasn't capable of being here. She's following us remotely. She will give a speech at the end of the project. She always followed us. Her contribution never went missing, and her vision was very important for us. I'd also like to thank Cinzia Maiolini, responsible for the CGL National Office 4.0, that has helped us since the very beginning of this project, and she's always been a lighthouse for us, a point of reference. I'd also like to thank Gabriele Guglielmi, International Policies Coordinator of PhilCam CGIO, and we've been working together for 12 years, and we've been working side by side, close, even though very often also far from one another. And for many years, we've been supporting each other and also standing each other a bit. And I'd also like to thank Minia. She's been my companion and a great cooperation with her. This is a very important thing, a very important element for the good results of the project. I'd also like to thank Federica Cocchi, president of APICA, the organization of CGL for professional managerial staff, for her attention and the support that he has showed towards all the international activities of PhilCamps in general. I'd like to thank Claudio Cornelli of FISAC Nazionale and of the International Department of FISAC and all the various territorial offices that are present here today from FISAC. FISAC helped us a lot because FISAC helped us understand what exactly is the blockchain and what impact it can have not only in the economy and the finance, but also on society. I'd like to thank all our brothers and sisters of the Sicilian CGIL offices and all the people that are present here today for the interest they have shown towards this project and that they are present here regardless of the various difficulties that were hampering their possibility of being here today. And I'd also like to thank all those that are present here today and that are following this event remotely, because thanks to your presence, you represent an idea of the trade union that not only is aware that digital transition and technological innovation will produce changes that will impact the quality and the quantity of employment, but you also represent an idea of the trade union that not only wants to sit on the sidelines and look, that wants to analyze, understand, anticipate the impacts and the effects to try to drive to lead this change for the greater good of all workers. There's a physical law that says nothing is created, nothing is destroyed, everything transformed. This is a valid law for the economy, for the labor market, and also for trade unions. We must be capable. We are almost called upon to not, let's say, adapt to change. I don't like this expression because it looks like we must just, accept changes. We instead have to try to adapt our toolbox, our strength, and we need to improve our strengths so that we can then use the skills we have and to face the present and future challenges. I will now close my brief introductory speech. It was a long thanks session, but it was really important to do so. So I wish you a productive day and give the floor to Alfio Mannino, General Secretary of CGL Sicily. Good day, everyone. First of all, we are honored as CGL Sicily to host an event such as this. And I, on behalf of the CGL Sicily, would like to thank Stefania, because at least me personally, but not only me, if today I'm aware of this term, blockchain, it's thanks to Stefania, because she called us and she thought about organizing this event. Before organizing this, I didn't even know what a blockchain was, and I don't think I'm the only one here. And it's clear that we are in a very special, particular transformation phase, and we are intercepting this change at the very beginning of our Congress season. So we should try to ask ourselves during the next Congress what kind of how can we lead and organize this transformation that's about to happen and that's about to have a huge impact on the labor market. So we start this kind of conversation here in Sicily, but I think that we as CGIO Sicily, we must ask ourselves and try to accept these challenges. It won't be easy, it won't be simple. These processes won't be easy to understand because, especially, Stefania was talking about a toolbox. We probably, if we're talking about these topics, we don't even have tools to understand, to interpret what's happening in the social and economic fabric of our society, what potential impact these could have. So I'd like to quote a book. This is an unknown territory we're about to traverse, and this will increase the level of accountability and trade union responsibility that we should have. And if I'd also like to add something else, which is maybe the thing I'm most interested by and that should be most fascinating for our organization. We have a problem of representation, especially in terms of young people, youth. We have an issue in terms of representing those that are actually within these processes, these digitalization and innovation processes. And very often we are incapable of representing them. A few months ago, I had a meeting and we tried to ask ourselves how we could enlarge our representation of these workers, how to attempt to give an answer to all these young people that live in a fragmented labor market, and I truly believe, and this text has been uh, published, I think we should ask ourselves a lot of different questions. I think our whole organization should try to accept this challenge because history asks us to, and we must be capable of answering the needs of the people we're representing. We must do so if we really want to be that big, powerful organization that drives the transformation processes in this country. It's difficult, it's complicated, but I think that here from Sicily we have all the necessary tools to try to improve the labor market. And as CGIO, we can do a good work on this in the next few years. Thank you. Thank you, Alfio. This is a challenge that we are willing to accept. We will now show a video of Maria Grazia Gabrielli, General Secretary of PhilCam, CGO, that unfortunately could not be with us here today in presence, but she wanted to send us this contribution of hers. PhilCam CGO is the trade union that has promoted this project. And in the last 2 years, we have walked together many other organizations. She's a partner of this project, and not only. And CGO, the European Trade Union Confederation, EFFAT, and Uni Europa, the federations and confederations of various countries, Comisiones Obreras in Catalonia, CGT in Belgium, and many research institutions and training institutions such as IRES Emilia-Romagna, Vectcro from Bulgaria, and Blockchain Core, a specialized agency on the issues of blockchain technologies. I'll now give the floor virtually to Maria Grazia Gabrielli for her message. Morning, everyone. Today, this project is about to finish. This project has seen PhilCams and many other national and international organizations, and thanks also to the technological support of many research institutions, this project is about to end. We have faced a new topic, a topic that is complex and kind of unknown for us in our country, but measuring ourselves with technological innovation is a part and will always be a part of trade union actions. Therefore, trade unions need to explore, understand, and anticipate these kind of transformations to govern change. It's a difficult challenge, as we all know very well, but it is necessary. If we think about what happened during the pandemic, these transformation processes have accelerated. There has been new problems and old ones have reemerged. We need to face these problems because now these have become urgent. From climate change to energy transition, the topic of personal health care, and the fight against unequal treatment in the labor market. These are the big issues, and we think the central issue topic is always the employment. And I think employment must be key, and blockchain technologies and this blockchain project wants to understand what risks can be posed to the employment market by technologies. We know that technologies are not neutral. They have an impact on employment, the quality of employment, and the development of employment. I'd like to close my brief speech, hoping you success, and wish you a nice day to all of you. I'd like to thank Maria Grazia, and now we have another brief video from Stefan Gran of the European Trade Union Confederation. He too was unable to be with us here today, but he wanted to participate and share with us a message.
Dear colleagues, please let me send you the best wishes on behalf of the European Trade Union Confederation here from Brussels. I would have been loved to be with you today at Catania, not only because I have Catania in good memories from my vacation last year. It's a really, really wonderful place to have a seminar. However, it's not only because of the nice place where you're meeting today, it's also because you're discussing a very important topic if it comes to new technologies in the framework of the project on blockchain technologies. I have seen the guide you conducted, the guide for Trade Unionist 4.0. I have to say, and I said it already at the last occasion, the webinar, for me, your project is the one project that really dealing on detail and most with these new technologies. I haven't seen so much on other trade unions, so you are the forefront in the trade union movement. And it will brings us a lot of food for thoughts, where we can get a lot out of your report for our own positioning here at the European level. As you know, we are fighting here, especially if it comes to digital tools at the workplace, for more workers' involvement, if it comes to workers' representatives, but also to trade unions. At the moment, we are very much involved in the AI regulation of artificial intelligence. And there, again, it's the same actually that we're fighting, that workers' representatives have a right to get informed and consulted. And of course, they have to have also the proper training to can assess these new technologies, because they are not easy to assess and you need the training, and that is, of course, very much key. And above, on top of this, we also have to say we need for sure also external expertise, because out of that, these systems getting more and more complex to analyze, and there we need also, of course, the right for trade union representatives and workers' representatives to get external expertise paid by the employer if we want to assess such systems, if they want to implement it at the workplace. That is something we are fighting here for, and we hope that we can succeed in the coming years to get here also some regulation. We tried at the moment in the platform work regulation, but of course that is very limited to the employer and the workers in the platform economy. What we of course aiming for is something for all workers, because it's not only the platform economy. I think we see these new technologies more and more also at ordinary workplaces. Therefore, again, let me thank for your work you have done, and maybe the work what you will have still want to do in the future. Let me thank also Stefania. I think you also did a great job in this project to hold everything together and to edit it also this very, very valuable report. And I'm looking forward to the outcome of your meeting today about your seminar. And I hope that we hear more from you to see how we can use the blockchain, but also how we can make sure that there are no risks involved, and that we as workers and trade unions are involved in something like this is implemented at the workplace. Thank you, and now good luck, and wish you all a good meeting.
Thank you to the European Trade Union Confederation. Certainly, this is not the last point, but a starting point. We have started this project, we thought about this project 3 years ago, much earlier, much before the pandemic, and we developed this project during a full-fledged pandemic. This gave a huge push to all sorts of technological innovations, and we will keep bringing this project forward even after its formal conclusion, because we believe it's a very interesting topic that will find a growing implementation in the employment market. I'd like to ask Gabriele Guglielmi from PhilChem's CGIO to come here, and I'll give him the floor. Thank you, Stefania. And thanks to all those in attendance here today, and also those that are following us remotely. Stefania has already thanked everyone, so I won't do that. I'll only thank the three people. It's strange that's only three people that Stefania forgot. The first one is Stefania herself. Thanks to her incredible strength, it's been 12 years that you have you dealt with me, and I'm heavy. I'm big. I'm heavy. It's hard to stand me. You can see how much success we had, and these successes of ours also have been possible thanks to our children and nephews. For example, my very first nephew was born the day this project started, so that's why I know that this project is 6 years and a half. And Stefania, in these last 12 years, has had 3 kids. So I must thank another person that Stefania always forgets about, because it's not that like you did everything on your own. I think Francesco should be thanked as well, because he allowed us to bring forward all these initiatives, and Stefania has decided to have her third kid during the blockchain project. And I'd like to also thank another person. It's always Stefania, but under a different role, which is another satisfaction that you can earn during your life. We were thinking some time ago, why are there no experiences of co-working in Sicily, maybe in Messina, where you've been working from home for years? So let's do a co-working project, and you can coordinate this project, because trade union offices are a co-working space. So we could gather all the young people there. This did not have success, but we are holding the blockchain conference in this beautiful building. I had visited this building previously for another project, and I'm really excited, and it's incredible to listen when there's the prince here that explains to you the history of this building. It's incredible. I'll close my very brief speech here, and I were given the task by Stefania to summarize the last years. Well, what happened? So I took in consideration 4 years, and I'll talk about these 4 years. I'll talk about these 3 points that you're looking at. The timing of European projects and the world. What has this project blockchain produced already, and the future? So the timing of European projects, especially, and here I already hear somebody saying, he always talks about this, but yes, this is important to talk about. If you talk about the modalities and the timing of European projects, especially if you're talking about technological aspects, but also economic, financial, or geopolitical issues, to be effective, they must adapt to the rapid transformations and the amount of time that has passed from the moment we first thought about creating the blockchain project, and the time that will take to finish this project will take about 4 years. That's like talking about a geological era. These are just some of the events, the facts that happened during the last 4 years and have changed the world. And now I can't read because it's too small, but in 2019 in Hong Kong, I'm not going to add anything else because we all know what happened in Hong Kong. 2019, always in there was the Ukraine gate, because Donald Trump was impeached due to something going on in Ukraine. There was the usual Amazon forest being cut down, and there was also COVID-19, but we still didn't know. Then we have 2020, Brexit, lockdown, Joe Biden becomes the 46th president of the United States, and the vaccine campaign starts in 2021. there is an attack to the Capitol Hill here in Italy, COP26, and the Taliban's conquer Kabul, capital of Afghanistan, after the retreat of the American U.S. troops established there. In 2022, Russia recognizes the Popular Republic of Donetsk and Lugansk and invades Ukraine. These are all the things that happened in the last 4 years. While preparing this conference, we were assigned a certain amount of tasks, and each one performed his own task. And this was what I had to do. This is the element that I had already prepared in March: the pandemic and the rapid diffusion globally of the virus and its variants, a war in Ukraine with bombs and missiles, and the risk of a nuclear exchange, with the unthinkable social and humanitarian tragedy that would follow, cyber attacks, sanctions, financial exchanges. If all this hasn't almost destroyed globalization, they have certainly modified it deeply. The consequences, especially in terms of supply chains and the food supply chain and the energy supply chain, have deeply changed. This wasn't a hard prophecy to do, and I'd like to quote Albert Einstein: I don't know with which weapons the Third World War will be fought, but I'm pretty sure Fourth World War will be fought with sticks and stones. This, unfortunately, brings us back to current events. We are witnessing right now how the fight, combat is going on, and we are seeing what the weapons are: grain, rape, and the cold that will soon arrive. We don't want to turn the other way. Let's talk about the project more specifically. What did the blockchain project already produce? I won't talk about things that are not my area of expertise. I'll talk about, in general, what this product already has and has been operative for a year. We have produced the global map of trade unions, something that didn't exist previously and that now exists. A map that contains the vision of confederate trade unionists like the ones in CGL that are well aware that there are no independent sectors, but everything is interrelated. In the last 12 years, we have demonstrated, like, especially at a national level, everything is interrelated, not only countries, but sectors as well. So if a trade union follows only the companies that work in their sector, then you've chosen the wrong job. Everything is connected, even multinational companies, and of course, trade unions as well. I always talk about a specific example: a metal workers company in the Italian region of Abruzzo. We asked the workers of the local company to, they were producing Coke cans, and solidarity arrived by the solidarity of the food chain. That's the interrelation I was talking about. And thanks to Davide Dazzi, IRES Emilia Romagna, he's the research coordinator for Open Corporation, we have uploaded on the network the list of all trade unions that participate to the European Trade Union Confederation and adhere to the Global Sector Confederation, so that they can communicate with one another also at an intersectoral level and also a cross-border fashion, so that they can be the ones controlling the nodes and the blocks within the blockchain, performing their role as a trade union, saying, yes, this is true, I'll certify this, but this is not true, I won't certify this. Potential futures. Why futures? Because I find myself in a phase, for age and for my time in CGL, I need to think about my future. I need to think about the future of CGL, but also my personal future. And the future of this project are certainly those mentioned by Stefania already, and I'll also like to mention one, which I think is the most interesting, published recently by AgriFood, which is the concept of the product from producer to consumer, which is one of our mottos as well as trade unions: from the factory to the table, from the fork to the fork. And we have always fought to establish traceability of the label. Today, this is possible thanks to non-fungible tokens, NFTs, and that's what the blockchain technology offers us as a potential opportunity. We must verify if all this is true or not, if this is realistic or not, and we know that these companies would be respecting not only hygienic standards but also social ones. And I'd like to mention other two topics that are mentioned in the manual as well and are part of our work. We're talking about the services sector, not only in the public companies, but also in private companies. And we had planned another project to follow the supply chain of the services sector, but I'd like to quote one of talk about one of the experiences about Jenny Johnson, CEO of Franklin Templeton. She said a small company with a token one day that will certify her belonging to a certain chain that has a relevant name will be capable of obtaining better rates from the investors, financing at better rates. We can do something similar as Open Corporation. We ask, how will you respect the due diligence process of the OECD norms in terms of multinational companies? Well, I say that this will strengthen the due diligence guidelines of OECD in terms of multinational companies. What's our personal future, even thinking about, good life, good living? And, all these topics are complicated, the war. I'd like to think and talk about something lighter. So I'd like to quote a part of the movie by Ken Loach, Bread and Roses, and I think this will be my future. I'll become a collector of good drinking and good stories. Maybe there's less of those, but they are important as well. So here's an example, Crew Rated. I won't open this website, and then nodes and blocks. Crew Rated. This is a good practice on how the blockchain technology and NFTs can democratize the possibility of drinking really good wine. The recent experience I'm referring to is an Italian that left Italy and that established this project. Each bottle that arrives in the warehouse has an NFT label, which is unique. It's not possible to copy this label or print it or put it on other bottles. Each bottle is registered in a blockchain with an NFT certification that solves the problem of traceability. This way, we're capable of certifying all movements, all transformations happen to that wine, and this will guarantee the owner even if he wanted to resell, for example, that bottle. So, democratizing the world of fine wines. In most cases, these wines are impossible to find. So if we have access to this kind of products, usually you have access to these products at crazy prices. I would like to give everyone instead the possibility to taste these kind of wines. I find this extremely elegant, an extremely elegant implementation of this technology. This part I called Other Passions. Nodes and blocks of the blockchain are not different from the journey of ports certified by stamps and permissions of the journey done by a paper letter. For example, I've been following the history of postal systems. This is a passion of mine. And some may know that my future, more than multinational companies, I will dedicate it to the postal history, as I have just said, and this is my website, by the way. And I will also experiment how useful blockchain and NFT certifications could be. Lately, there has been a great debate among collectors on the greatest collection, Italian collection, that would be sold. And this sale has now been done, and some rare pieces are being called the former Astolfi collection. And the question I'll try to give an answer now is, will blockchain technology and NFT certification understand us to know where those rare documents are right now? And we have already talked about this procedure. Cartier is already implementing this on valuable objects. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks once again, Stefania. Thank you, Gabriele. Thank you also for having talked about topics and fields that seem very far from one another. We're talking about blockchain technology that seems like a very far away thing from our everyday lives, but instead then we understand that we find QR codes in the products we eat, for example, or in the clothes that we buy in the shops, the same QR code that tells about the history of the product and it's a journey from the raw materials to its transformation and distribution. And these sectors seem so far away from one another, like international dynamics, what's happening in multinational companies, in the HQ of multinational companies, as opposed to what happens and what is the effect on the territories that we daily work on. Everything is connected, everything is interrelated, and the European Trade Union map that Davide Dazzi, with a contribution of Davide Dazzi and IRES Emilia Romagna, has this objective, that of attempting to build a network of trade union alliances that are cross-border, cross-sector, but that can help us in our trade union daily activity to give an answer to the models and proposals that are fielded by multinational companies. I'd like to now show you a brief video. It's an animation. I'd like to thank Settimelli and Gaia Bracco, two excellent video makers that have created this cartoon, and we asked them almost a heroic action to translate graphically complex topics such as blockchain. They managed to do so, to explain this to a 5-year-old kid, just to understand each other. Now you'll see, and these are two professionals, and now we'll show you what they've done. Leonardo Settimelli and Gaia Bracco, the authors of this video. Blockchain for decent work. Blockchain, a chain of blocks, is an information technology used to create a digital archive which is updated and managed by a secure and transparent way. All participants to the chain may access contributing to the control of the data, which is validated with no centralized intervention. The sector where this technology has been mostly implemented is the financial one. Many other sectors, although, are being interested, and also the employment sector. Here, it's already used to trace and certify the sustainability of certain supply chains against counterfeiting in the implementation of labor contracts, working times, salaries, contributions, health and safety, and to promote gender parity, to measure performance and certify vocational training. The potential for this technology is huge, but each implementation must be carefully evaluated. Blockchain is not neutral. It works based on the instruction that's being given and the objectives that are programmed. The trade union topics are many and significant: transparency of data, the right to information and consultation, the struggle against control and pressure, and the criteria to certify the quality of work, verifying illegal activities, negotiating the algorithm that automate the production. Trade unions must ask themselves, study and conduct research. Workers must be aware of the processes. If they're not, they could be overwhelmed. The 4.0 trade unionist must renew himself, act proactively within the company. Blockchain technologies may certify the quality of working condition, but the company may not control itself. Workers' representatives must be an active node in this chain and safeguard rights and interests of the labor force. Trade unions must make sure that blockchains become a democratic tool and bringer of decent work. For a more in-depth information, download our guide on blockchain through this QR code. Now it's my turn. It's my turn to talk. I'll stand up if I'm allowed to. So it's my turn to talk about the guide that you found on your seats and that through that QR code you may download for free in the Italian and English versions. This is the result of the last 2 years of our activities. It's the summary of all the moments and the seminars and the discussions that we held with experts coming from the academic world. Here we have Giorgio Verrecchia. He has contributed to the creation of this guide. The continuous exchanges with the trade union organizations of various countries. This is the result of our 2 years of work. I'm asking Marco if he can show my slides. May I stand up now, Marco? Okay. So this project had as an objective to understand what is a blockchain and which fields in the labor market can see the implementation of this technology and what risks and opportunities can this technology present for workers and the trade union. We started from one certainty, which is this. Blockchain is a technology, one of many technologies that's used within companies, and it's a technology that, as all technology, uses data. Data is key in this new economy we have. They have been defined as the new oil. Tomorrow there will be a CGIL Congress on the economic power of data. Cinzia Maiolini will take part and Gianna Fracassi will close the meeting. So data is the new oil. And specifically, blockchain registers data, certifies data, and extracts information. But we must do a brief introduction to clear up one point. Even though data is not objective, the extracted information are not. So it is uncontrovertible that data is objective, but the information, the interpretation of this data is not objective, is subjective. So I'll bring you an example. If the unemployment rate decreases, that doesn't mean that there are more people working, because if at the same time the rate of inactive workers has increased, then that simply means there's less people looking for a job. For example, the Great Resignment data. That's certainly an interesting data, but if you go and understand who's actually resigning from their jobs, then you will have a distorted, partial vision of reality. So the interpretation of data is always subjective. The moment you highlight certain data, not others, of course, I'm obviously doing a subjective operation, which answers to my values, my needs, my objectives. and the way data is elaborated, evaluated, and processed answers to the interests of those performing this action. No technology, therefore, is neutral because it's the result of a data elaboration, and technology itself may have positive or negative objectives. AI, for example, can be used to guide the trajectory of missiles, guided missiles in war, but it can also be used to help those that have communication problems and help them freely express themselves and in an understandable way. So, when facing a technology that is not neutral, we may not be neutral. And that doesn't mean that we have to take a side necessarily from those who think that technology is the solution to all evil, or side with the apocalyptics, those that think that technology is the end of everything, is the end of employment, total automation. No, that that's not what it means. We don't have to take this kind of side, but we must tell people our opinion. We must make sure that the workers that are being impacted by this technology have the possibility of expressing their interests and have the possibility to make their voices heard and attempt to negotiate to bargain for the interests that are being fielded by all the participants to the process. So, what's a blockchain exactly? It's an archive, a digital archive, or the certification of data and information built and shared by multiple nodes on a network. Each node, each participant of to the network possesses a copy of this archive, and each one, based on its own skills and experience, will contribute by introducing and validating a certain amount of data. All the copies of this digital archive are interconnected and synchronized. Therefore, it may not happen. The level of control is so dispersed that every data that's being inserted but it's wrong, it will be immediately reported. At the same time, it's impossible to falsify, modify data once it's inserted in the blockchain because the nodes of the blockchain would see that, they would understand that and report this transformation. So that's why we say that, at least in theory, blockchains guarantee traceability and transparency of the data that's included in the system. The fields where blockchain technology can be implemented are many. The first one is the certification of the sustainability of company supply chains. Companies, many companies, always more companies, are using blockchain technologies to certify the history of their product. So, from the gathering of raw materials to the industrial transformation and finally the distribution. So, we see there's, for example, automotive companies such as Ford or Volkswagen, or food companies such as Coop, Auchan, and Nastrazurro, the Italian beer company, or the textile sector that use blockchain technology to tell the final user, look, my product wasn't created using raw materials extracted in war zones, or it wasn't produced by child labor or exploited labor forces, or maybe you can tell the consumer that your product has been produced in healthy environments, as Levi's does thanks to an app developed together with Harvard. Or, more simply, you can use this technology to tell the final consumer, tell him, look, my food product is truly biological, is certified biological. For example, luxury item companies can use this technology to certify the authenticity of their products. They can say, my products are not counterfeit. And certifying the blockchain is also used to certify the regularity of employment relationships. So, to make sure that all the obligation in terms of administrative and fiscal and social security terms are being performed. All the various communications to the various institutions are being done, but also the proper communications to trade unions are being sent, and that salary is being paid regularly, that safety measures are being implemented, and all relevant labor laws are being applied. Blockchains are also used to certify gender policies. Here, two systems based on blockchain technologies are set up to report objective data on the working conditions of women, for example, in the workplace. Data such as the composition of staff, careers, salaries, the requests for leaves, parental leaves, resignements, social security nets, layoffs, hirings. All this from the trade unions part is used to certify the presence of proper gender policies and measures aimed at answering the need for safeguard of women workers. And blockchain technologies can be used to measure performances as well, the organizational performance and the performance of the workers too. There's a pilot project in Bari where the blockchain technology has been used to measure the performance of remote workers. So, on one hand, you measure the administrative efficiency, on the other, you measure the efficiency of your workers. So, and see if the work-life balance is being respected when working remotely. Both in the public sector and the private sector, this technology is used to certify training. The training that is achieved by the individual worker. Training institutions and universities use blockchain technologies, and also employer associations in cooperation with trade unions are starting to implement this technology as well. Metaprendo, for example, is a tool that has been introduced during the collective bargaining with the metal workers in Italy, therefore introduced bilaterally by the employer associations and the trade union organizations of the metal workers sector to attempt to certify the training that was being given to all the companies that adhered to the sector employer associations. Therefore, it's a tool that, thanks to which it is possible to guarantee and verify that training as an individual right for each worker is being provided. Blockchain technologies are also used to manage active and passive labor market policies. For the last 6 years in Italy, we have been talking about the Workers' Digital Register, place where you find all the information concerning a worker to help and make it easier to cross the supply and demand of workers, and also to relocate staff that has been involved in processes of reorganization and restructuring of companies. Blockchain technologies are also being used always more in the procurement sector to digitalize the procurement sector, so-called e-procurement. It's been for years, the European institutions have been trying to promote the digitalization of the procurement sector for various reasons, of course. And most of all, we talk about blockchains in the phase of assigning a contract for two reasons. The first is that certainly it solves the problem of the asymmetry in terms of information between public administration and economic operators, where it favors the relevation of data and information concerning the prerequisites of the operators participating to a tender. And one other problem that is being solved is the assigning problem. So if there's any kind of controversy in the moment of assigning a contract, if you establish the criteria previously, these criteria to assign the contract and understand when there's something illegal, well, then you'll almost automate and make it automatic to assign the the contract, which is one of the most dangerous phases of the procurement phase. It would also be useful to implement the blockchain also during the execution phase to certify that in the various workplaces and factory floors, all the various norms and contract provisions are being implemented. I don't want to summarize all the potential fields of implementation for blockchain technology because you'll find that on the guide that we have given you. I wanted to talk to you about more or less the potential implementation fields in the labor market, in the employment sector. And what I'd like to underline are the trade union aspects, the most interesting aspects for trade unions, therefore the potential implications for workers. First potential effect is that it's not possible for the company to certify itself. If blockchains are a certification system that certify the quality of working conditions in the workplace, well, then it can't be the company to perform this action on its own. I mean, the controller cannot control itself. In that case, we wouldn't even be talking about corporate social responsibility. We would be talking also about only about a cosmetic makeup activity. I'm looking myself in the mirror. I put some makeup and then I say how good I look. It can't work like that. A trade union must be a node in this chain, not only having a role of certification when everything is going well. This means the trade unions must participate to the process since the beginning, not only after the fact. So if the worker is an object of the data, then he also has to be a subject. He must tell which kind of data is more useful to inform on the quality of working conditions, who must certify this kind of data so that it's credible, and how this kind of data must be elaborated and processed and with the aim of extracting relevant information. The criteria for measuring and interpreting working conditions must absolutely be shared and transparent. It's not enough to say that in the workforce there are more, for example, women or than men performing a certain task. If, for example, women are being paid half what a man is paid. And it's also not enough to say that within the industrial perimeter working conditions are good if then uh, the company is making use of suppliers that don't respect collective bargaining and that don't apply or implement appropriate health and safety measures and don't provide professional training, etc. Also, it's not enough to say that within a workforce there haven't been any reports of harassment or violence or gender problems. That's not enough to certify and say that that workplace is inclusive for women. So the topic of data accuracy is very relevant. That technology is not guaranteed, must be guaranteed by quality. And these are other trade union implications of trade union interest. If we establish the criteria for certifying the quality of work, the working conditions, we also have to determine what happens if that quality is not being guaranteed. And this is done through the so-called smart contracts. That's agreements that are transposed into code and based on which we decide what happens if certain conditions happen. So, for example, what happens if during a public procurement contract the salary is not being paid or health and safety measures are not being respected? What happens if the gender parity is not guaranteed on a workplace? What if the training is not being provided to all workers? What happens if the performance in terms of organization, uh, company organization, is not appropriate? How can you empower internal resources, the skills and experiences of all workers? So the answer to all this is given by sitting around the bargaining table and taking common solutions and shared decisions that will then be transposed into code. Another interesting topic is that if we must find this kind of data, then we must be very careful to avoid the misuse and improper use of personal data, especially a misuse that could cause a form of control and pressure on workers, the violation of personal information. That's why the consensus and the informed participation of workers is key. Obviously, concerning all the topics related to trade union and the role that we as trade unions have to cover. Cinzia Maiolini, Cornelli, Federica Cocchi, if she will want to say something later, will add more at the end of our, and also Tania Scacchetti at the end of this meeting will talk more about this. So the message that I wanted to convey is that if we must adapt our tools, our toolbox, and to an evolving human resource management, then we must do so asking a role that's not only a certifying role, but it must be an effective role in determining the rules of the game and the criteria based on which data must be interpreted and how to intervene if anomalies or critical aspects emerge. We're not talking about something that could happen but still didn't happen. We're talking about processes that are already ongoing, both at a corporate level and a public administration level. Processes that the pandemic certainly harmed. All the various plans are being implemented right now to recover from this pandemic, and also the digital transition is being pushed more right now. We must decide right now if we want to be inside those processes or just sit on the side and look at them, and also if we should explore all the potential implementations of this new technology, starting from these spaces of widespread control and participation that probably also the creators of this technology had in mind when they created the blockchain technology. No innovation process just breaks through. We didn't go from Fordism to post-Fordism and the just-in-time flexible modality or the digital platforms in a single day. Even as we speak, there's still models that coexist, older traditional models that coexist with the digital platforms. We're talking about technological innovations that slowly and subtly will infiltrate the traditional organizational models, and they will modify these models. There won't be any uh, great moment of breaking through. So we need to study what's going on to be ready and equipped when these changes will actually manifest themselves. This is true for the blockchain technology, but also for digitalization in general. Studying changes isn't done simply to we don't study changes just to study them. I mean, we study them so that we are then capable of anticipating the effects. And I think this is a duty for us as a trade union. We don't only want to manage the present, but also build the future. Thank you for your attention. This is the QR code you can use to download the guide that has been produced both in Italian and English. And we are publishing and printing a guide in all the languages of the European Union. there will be a brief summary of the what the blockchain technology is in all the languages of the EU. This will be available in paper form and digital form. And for further questions, we are at your complete disposal. Here you can see my email address. Thank you for your attention. I'll now give the floor to Cinzia Maiolini. Well, first of all, good day, everyone. I'd like to say that Stefania has managed in a reasonable time to explain the sense of the last 2 years of research on a topic that has been rightly said. When we started this project, it was an unknown topic, and in the last years, there has been a series of initiatives by various institutions, IMPS and INAP, that started to analyze the use of blockchain technologies in internal certifications. For example, this digital training booklet for workers. So, a technology that has been well explained and also in a very efficient way by that brief animation that we have seen that makes it understandable by everyone. A topic that is, if explained in a different way, could be a bit hard to understand. And the topic of blockchain technologies is within a wider system of technological implementation that is relevant to all productive and service activities, and necessarily it impacts our trade union role. We, at a national level, as a confederation, we have produced two manuals for 4.0 trade unionists. The first manual was published 4 years ago and distributed during the last CGIL Congress. And it talked about the bargaining of the algorithm. And by the way, we invented this term that is now used by other organizations too. We've been mentioned to at an international level as authors of this term. And more recently, we have also published a manual on AI, artificial intelligence. So most of this work was done by Stefania, and all these activities are necessarily collective because this technology is so pervasive. It has such an impact at various levels on organizational activities and working activities that even the two national manuals we've worked on together, even with people that like Monica Ceremina, they're sitting here right now, and with the various departments, we attempted to talk about all the various aspects of this topic coming from let's say, from a specific idea, which is the idea of being aware of something to be able to bargain on that something. If we're not capable of gaining enough knowledge on these technologies and what impact they can have on work organization, then we will lack the initial skills necessary to bargain. And Stefania has said, and after me, another person will talk, whose category, whose sector he works in, has suffered greatly from the impact of this technology, which is FISAC, F-I-S-A-C. But the key topic that's present in all our discussions is how we, from the local trade union offices and arriving to the national offices and the secretaries, how can we be a part of the algorithmic process that's being used in the organizational processes? Translating this, it means how can we perform the role that we're performing right now? We bargain for working hours, we bargain the salary, we bargain payments, we bargain a series of elements. And we cannot accept as an answer from our counterpart that since certain decisions are being taken by the algorithm, these decisions are inherently correct, and we didn't have the possibility of understanding how this algorithm was produced and what kind of data the algorithm was fed, because the algorithm is just an operation, so it needs elements to work, to evaluate, and what the results, the final results are. Is it possible to do so? Sure. We have national labor contracts. We know that the very first part participating in a bargaining is the ones that establish the rights and duties. And in all labor contracts, the ones that, well, these are the ones we subscribe, we sign, indicate the right to information towards trade unions. And we want to even push beyond this. We think that there should be certain elements that should be even more determined. It's not possible for us to be informed after the process. We need to be informed before certain processes. And then we also need certain intermediate steps during which we decide if the results we are about to reach is the one that we decided before. Nobody probably here is an IT engineer, but those who are say that the capacity of the system, and in specific way the AI that understands on its own famous machine learning, the programmer says it's not a given that the result that you will obtain is the one based on how the system was programmed. So we need to be capable of understanding during the process if the results that we are attaining are the appropriate ones. So what's the basic topic? And Stefania already talked about this. All the topics that are pertaining to the status of workers. So where there are automatic decisions, and an example is, for example, the decision that the algorithm that decides who is available, which worker is available. Well, we were very available to decide together an agreement on this, and to decide which kind of data we should feed to the algorithm to understand if maybe now it was Stefania's turn to speak, or maybe Cinzia. What's the criteria? The professional skills, the proximity to where the problem happened. I mean, there's many elements that can be included. So we need to transpose the agreement, our previous agreement, to we can transpose it into an algorithm, as it happened in the blockchain technologies for the metal workers contract. We said if there is a training, a vocational training happening, you can absolutely use blockchain technology to do so, because the blockchain technology does give you the the unchangeability of the chain, the transparency. If the trade union signed that agreement, the trade union also wants to verify the implementation of that agreement. And I'm talking to a room full of brothers and sisters, but not only those coming from the 19th century like me. You all know that when you approach when you approached your first time the trade union activities, subscribing an agreement is half of the job, but the other half is actually making the agreement implemented, truly implemented. So to be sure to be capable of validating and transparently, which I believe is the minimum element, I think this is a key factor for us trade unionists. And I don't want to waste your time anymore, but I think that initiatives such as this, this initiative is not just regards a single specific topic. It's a continuous process, a learning process, which doesn't finish, because technology is proceeding, is evolving really rapidly. So being capable of remaining updated, and also discussing our own methods, maybe too often segmented, because as Stefania says, we talked about NFTs, which is another thing we should talk about a lot. The NFTs need to specify exactly what we need by that, because it's complicated to understand what you're selling. There's a market for this. So if we're talking about supply chains, we often go beyond the perimeter of our category or sector. So you need to understand when you certify from the starting point and where you're going to end up and what kind of intersectoral cooperation will be necessary. I always say this when I talk to my colleagues from FLAI to understand together, for example, the quality of the product, but also the quality of the work that goes from when you plant the seed to when you distribute the final product. In the middle, there's a world, as we all know. There's the food sector, there's logistics, there's field camps for distribution. So there's many different organizations involved in this. We should have a higher vantage point to view all this from a higher ground to understand which organizations from different sectors should be put together. And I include my organization in this. We must change and participate to be able to participate. And I'm talking about our need. We don't need to become all engineers. Well, it certainly is possible that one day we will have to make use of experts of this kind to move forward. We have the president of APICA here, Federica, and she knows very well that we have almost the duty to interrogate the highly skilled professionals that actually determine these kind of processes. So to be able to better understand this technology. And one thing is certain, we have started thinking, the office I'm the head of right now was created in 2016, so a long time ago. And at the time it was called Office for the 4.0 Industry because transformation was seen as an industrial transformation. Today it's employment 4.0 because we're trying to include all the representation of workers in all sectors, public administration, etc., etc. So we always started from one point that technology is not neutral. Behind each technological implementation, there is a political decision. So, since we are a subject of the bargaining process and a political subject, we must be able to perform two actions and understand who, why, and what the objectives are of any process. Today, we know that with the PNRR, there is an almost bullish investment on digitalization. We talked about the digital health record. That's the intention. Now, in theory, this is already 10 years old, but in practice, we all know that it's very different between what is supposed to be and what actually is. There's often a very big difference, but certainly investments are being done and big investments too. And also, it's being stated very clearly that they will want to implement a decision at a public level determined by artificial intelligence. For example, when assigning staff to tasks in the public administration, we can't expect that to be a neutral decision, and we can't accept as an answer, well, look, it's a mathematical process, mathematical is a certainty, so that process is correct. This is the passage, and this passage might seem logical, but it's not. And in this process, we as a trade union must be present with its capacity to bargain and resolving conflicts. Thank you. Thank you, Cinzia, and thank you for allowing us to pass from theory to practice. You've given us some clear indications on the various practical fields upon which we have to act from a trade union point of view and trade union action. And I would like to thank you also because you respected the allotted time. I'll now give the floor to Claudio Cornelli, International Policies Coordinator of FISAC CGIL. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say that, as you can see, I've got papers here because I prepared myself. I prepared a speech, as an international department, because this is a work that has been done by many people together. And even if I'm the one talking right now, this is the product of many different people. So I will be speaking on behalf of my whole department. And I'll have to talk about the less noble aspect of blockchains, because we heard about the noble part. There's a traceability, there's the, let's say, it's impossible. Unfortunately, I think that there's always the possibility, scams, illegal activity, but let's say it's very hard on a certain good try to falsify or alter information and do stuff that you should not be doing. With finance, this situation is completely different, and we'll try to understand why. Now, clearly, the last part of my speech will be aimed at trying to explain how the trade union should equip itself in the finance sector in relation to workers, customers, and also the country, because when we talk about finance, this is what we're talking about. So, as we have already heard, the blockchain is a subfamily of a certain technology, a block of chains containing transactions. And finance is transactions. Once it was a manual operation in each territory, in each city. There was the compensation room where the various employees of the various banks would physically exchange checks. Today, this thing doesn't exist anymore. No? Everything is digitalized long before the blockchain technologies. Now, the digital revolution, the implementation of blockchain technologies are often characterized by the necessity of decentralizing activities. This allows, obviously, and immediately as a result, to, if you want to avoid physical banks, financial institutions, of notaries, physical notaries, and clearly, the digital revolution caused by the blockchain technology started from the Bitcoin world and the cryptocurrencies world. And the relation between blockchain and Bitcoin is very close because it was released in 2009. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. Maybe for those who work in this sector, it was a more famous thing, but certainly it was a tsunami within the financial sector, because we went from bitcoins to Amazon that wanted to do the exact same thing, creating their own platform. Google tried to do their own platform, and etc. etc. So there was a huge tsunami. And among the news introduced by the coins, there was the fact that each transaction was legitimized by a decentralized network and not by centralized authorities. Do you understand the impact of what I've just said? Finance was regulated up until yesterday, and it is still today, by central authorities, the European Central Bank, the World Bank, CONSOB, and all those bodies and monitoring institutions that work together and control the financial activities and the interchange between banks. This technology would completely change all this. Now, obviously, there are many different platforms that were created: Bitcoin, Ethereum, IOTA, Nano, Zcash, Monero. Today, there are more than 1,000 platforms, and new ones are being created every day. So, what's the future of these actions, these unknown thrusts toward the future? The future is still to be written, and the true problem is how we will write this future. Politics, the monitoring bodies, how will they write the future of this tsunami? Because this, we believe, is the key element. At the moment, currently, We know that the European Central Bank and the European Commission are intervening because it is clear what can happen, an immediate transaction of financial fluxes produce if it is not either controlled by politics or by monitoring bodies. It can destroy a country in 10 minutes. I'll be very brutal, but that's exactly what could happen. These platforms have 7 common characteristics. Digitalization, meaning that data is transformed in digital format. Decentralization, information is registered by being distributed among multiple nodes to guarantee safety and resilience. Traceability of transfers. Each element on the archive is traceable, and you can disintermediation. This is something that regards directly us bank workers, because the transactions are possible without intermediaries, so without trusted bodies and monitoring bodies, so without the presence of physical people working. Transparency, unchangeability of the archive, programmability of transfers. But how does the blockchain technology impact the world of digital finance? Where are these new technologies mainly being used? Well, in the handling of payments, for example, in the reconciling of interbank payments, and the creation of services to simplify the transfer of money between various currencies, for example. Look at the Santander project, for example, a multinational Spanish bank that announced in 2016 this project, and it's operative since 2018. The capital market, the handling of financial documents, the support to supply chain finance, the handling of identities, traceability. The whole world of banking is being transformed by this element, and we are living this in the sector physically, how this transformation is happening. Blockchain is the main element on which all these applications are based that allow financial activities of all kinds and that today go well beyond cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrency is a digital currency, but then there's crypto assets, the so-called tokens, which each activity is registered in digital form. After this brief introduction, you can understand how the blockchain technology represents a revolution in the financial sector, with consequences and challenges that can involve the whole economic system and the normative system within which finance operates as a whole. I'll just move along because I'll bore you and talk for too long. But basically, the problem is this. You can see now. I'll jump directly to. Thank you, sorry. I'd like to talk directly about. Here it is. To maintain the pace of digital development without losing control of it, a text print on regulatory reporting and ensuring compliance has been deployed with the objective of demonstrating the potential of new innovative technologies to solve operative sectors in the regulatory compliance sector. And in terms of supervision, the regulatory framework at a European level has been introduced. The so-called digital finance package is something similar to what I was talking earlier, done by the G20. This norm could increase the complexity both of a stablecoin project, such as the one by Facebook, and for cryptocurrencies proposed by foreign central banks like the digital yuan, which would give Europe the time to develop the digital euro, which was launched by the European Central Bank in 2021. So the various solutions proposed by central banks highlight a key element. The central bank digital currencies China started the experimentation on the DCET, a digital currency that tries to repropose some of the advantages of the crypto assets. And the initiative has been promptly followed by other central banks, among which, as I said, the announcement of the European Central Bank that said they want to develop a fully digital version of the euro, the digital euro. So I think I'll just jump all these things. They're very interesting, but also hard to talk about. I'll send you all the documents, of course. And certainly, we should talk about some very important things. I'll just talk about one last thing, and then I'll leave you to read on your own if you want. Blockchain technology certainly creates. Here we are. At the end of the day, what I'm interested in talking about is the trade union aspect. So, fintech, digital finance, software, and these kind of things. The banking system, in some cases, is substituting the worker, the traditional banking worker. And what we've known until today is completely changed. The use of online banks, apps, phones, and online trading truly it is now no longer necessary to physically go to the banks. Is that true? Apparently, yes. We could ask Cinzia about this more specifically. We have something in common, unfortunately, a common problem. That's why I mentioned her right now. But so yes, apparently today it's no longer necessary to go to the bank. You can do anything remotely, reduced cost, closure of subsidiaries, layoff of staff. These are the direct consequences, but then there's also the indirect consequences, even more subtle. First of all the staff for higher categories of customers, private wealth, those are physically still all there. Those were not fired. Who has a considerable wealth superior to a certain amount, he not only has a personal consultant telling him how to invest this wealth, but this consultant will also perform any single banking operation he needs, the client needs, as opposed to us common mortals that instead the banking network is closing down. There's a desert now in terms of the credit system in the country. And obviously, a lot of people are being left home, a lot of workers are being fired, and the weakest part of society is finding difficulties. More senior citizens, people that have a harder time using technology, are certainly having a hard time right now using banking systems, the new banking system. But these desertification, we are very scared by it. And this is a topic that not only FISAC would like to talk about, but also CGIL. You here in the South, you know very well about this problem. We've seen this problem in mountainous territories, in economically depressed territories. Banks go away and they leave space to something else. And that something else is the danger. This is a very subtle problem. Almost finished. Almost. So I think that if we look at the big companies of the 20th century, we come from Turin. Cinzia and I, there was the historic Fiat central offices where workers, there were thousands and thousands of workers. Today, there's just a few thousand left. Certainly, technology and digitalization, mechanization of processes reduce the amount of physical staff. But we don't want to be scared by this. We certainly must monitor this and safeguard and guarantee that if there is a reduction in staff, nothing is created, as Stefania said earlier. Nothing is destroyed, but everything is transformed. Then we have to govern the transformation and guarantee. Where there is less necessity of physical work, well, in any way guaranteed to the working population through, I don't know, agreements on reduced working hours at being paid the same salary, to be able to use the same amount of workers spread on more on the whole working week. That's a possibility. But anyway, it's clear that there has been a very, very clear transformation in all the sectors of the labor market. We look at this from a specific angle of the finance and banking sector. So we can say that from a digitalization point of view, we've been working hard, very hard in our sector with our counterparts, and remote work, which is this new element that has increased a lot during the pandemic. This is an additional transformation in the working methodology, and we as trade unionists, we must be ready to face this, to manage these different spaces of bargaining and the opportunities to represent our workers. When you face a transformation such as this, you have to determine a new working time, working hours. You need to regulate the disconnection from a working system. You have to reestablish the safety and security, because in the working place, safety is guaranteed, because there's the encounters, and the whole workplace is planned in terms of increasing health and safety. But in private homes, this is not true. So posture and where the computer is, and this is a terrain for bargaining, which is completely different for us as trade unionists, but highly, I would say, exciting, because it's a new element. And there's one additional element, and I will end my speech here. We must ask ourselves, and not only ask and interrogate ourselves, but let's say develop our antibodies, because the moment you see, for example, in Turin, a skyscraper by Intesa San Paolo was built, and it had to contain around 4,000 employees. Today, maybe there's 100 every day, 100 people working in that building. Clearly, all the other ones are at home. How can you reach those workers in trade union terms? How do you represent those workers? How do you avoid that worker feels like a self-employed worker, and he starts establishing a direct relation with a counterpart, ignoring the trade union? Maybe he thinks he's strong, but we know that workers on their own are not strong. And these are the questions that we should ask ourselves, and on which we must work, without demonizing the future, but being capable of understanding it and equip ourselves to govern it. Thank you, and have a good day, everyone. Thank you, Claudio, for giving us an explanation of the relation between blockchain and finance, and telling us that what's happening in the financial sector is not an isolated thing that's happening in a separate reality, but it's having an impact on the economy as a whole. And of course, this means that everybody, must work at an intersectoral and cross-border way, to work all together, regardless of the sector of origin, and in an and a confederal cooperation. Now, to remain in the financial sector, I would ask Marco to show the video sent by Uni Europe Finance, Morten Clausen. Okay, we need a minute for that. And he too, unfortunately, due to logistics, was unable to be here in presence, but he wanted to send us a message. Morten Clausen, Uni Europe Finance, the European Federation for the Financial Sector.
Dear friends and colleagues, I could unfortunately not be with you today in presence, but I hope that you will have a successful event. Thank you in any case for giving me the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you on this important topic. As we know, the European Commission has in recent years been very focused on the developments taking place in the tech world. From the presenting of legislative proposals for fintech blockchain, and artificial intelligence, to the creation of the Blockchain Observatory, we see the European legislators both interested in and sometimes weary of the power that these tools hold. And it is precisely because of this potential power that we at Unieuropa believe it is important for unions to follow these developments closely and to have a say in the matter. As we know, companies are keen to adopt the newest technology if they think that it will give them a competitive advantage. Blockchain is no different. Even though it was initially invented to diversify control, we see today a move increasingly to centralize control over new blockchain applications being presented, with the issuer of the system holding the keys of access. For this reason, it is important for trade unions to learn and understand how these systems work and what impacts they can have on the working lives of our members. We continue to advocate for a human in control element and for union reps to be included and informed when these systems are being developed and implemented. This, however, is not always easy, since the technology is new and constantly evolving. Unions must therefore make sure to train their people in what to look out for and to help them to understand how to best leverage this technology for the benefit of their colleagues. As we speak about blockchain, it is an innovative idea to have trade unions develop their own systems. Systems designed not for profit optimization, but to ensure good working conditions. Be it blockchain applications to compare working conditions, properly record working time, or health and safety related data, the possibilities are endless and can be tailored to a great degree. We therefore believe that it is to the clear benefit of unions to engage with this technology, to harness it for their own benefit, and to not be afraid to use it in ways that have not been tried and tested in previous trade union strategies. In closing, I want to leave you with one quote that often comes to mind when speaking about trade unions and technology. It was spoken by the historian Yuval Noah Hariri, who said, "What I try to focus on is not to try to stop the march of technological progress. Instead, I try to run faster. If Amazon knows you better than you know yourself, the game is up." And with that, I will end my intervention. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to address you all today, and I wish you a very successful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin, for highlighting the topic of training, which is very important because this must not be a topic only for those who work in this sector. The topic of technological innovation and digital transition must not become something that's discussed only, in secret rooms and restricted discussions. It must become a topic that impacts and involves the organization, the trade union as a whole, from the grassroots, the new member, up to the general secretary of the organization we belong to. It's an important topic because each one of us must play their part. I'd like to give you the floor, the people that are present here in this room or those that are connected remotely, to share comments, observations, and questions or thoughts. If you want, the floor is yours. So, Federica Cocchi, president of APICA, the CGL association representing professional and managerial staff. Well, I'd just like to, break the ice so that somebody else can think about something to say. So, actually, many interesting things have been said today in these first few hours of discussions we had, and many, many interesting ones, I would say. I'd start by quoting Einstein. Since Stefania mentioned the laws of physics, and by quoting him, I would say that we are facing the necessity to overcome the old maps and adapt them to be able to explore the new world. I think this project, this manual we produced, are the example of practical tools that will give us the capacity to read these new maps and understand this new world, which is not even that new, I would say, because we've been facing it for years. And these new maps need a new kind of knowledge to be read, so training and skills. And Stefania was saying this right now when she was summarizing the speech by our colleague from Uni Europe Finance. We need these elements, training, knowledge, and skills, because these are the fundamental elements when we talk about the model of development that we want for the future. We want a development model where people are at the center of the future world. We are establishing the human factor, labor, and the quality of employment are the cornerstone of the change we want to bring forward. So it's not only about defining parameters and gathering and interpreting data. That's obviously our starting point, but we need to also trace and be able to trace and have the maps, the skills to be capable of tracing future scenarios in terms of employment development and professional skills development. So I'm mentioning also what Cinzia was saying earlier. We need to be capable of being able to read these passages and these transformations. We need to be inside the processes. So we need to also welcome all those professionals that can help us to read this new world and make us as a trade union more capable of giving appropriate answers to these transformations. If we want, as Alfio was saying at the beginning, be able to represent at our best a context which is nowadays always more wider and wider, if we want to represent people, as we say in our Charter of Rights as well, workers regardless of what kind of employment they are in, and which is one form today, and tomorrow it could change, be something else. So we need to redefine and understand how to be able to interpret these differences between the power level of, let's say, companies and workers, and what our role as trade unions must be, what tools must we equip ourselves with to be able to talk with multinational companies in a world that I keep defining as global, because the pandemic, the war, shows us how we're going back to also a local world without forgetting the global dynamics that obviously happen all the time. So the management of data, the handling and ownership of data is the new gold. I call it the new gold of the Far West. What was in the 18th century when everybody was moving to find and own this gold. So data and our capacity to handle this data is the new gold, and we're chasing this Far West. And I will close now because with another quote that it will be a lot simpler. There's a musical group, a very young one, so we talk about Einstein, which is a bit an older thing, and to the young people, it's called Eugenio in Via di Gioia, and he says that to change the world, you need micro-revolutions, and that there can't be one revolution without awareness raising, because big problems must be faced by small behaviors, practical behaviors. So we as trade unions, what are we capable of bringing forward? Collective awareness raising and the capacity to establish networks which go beyond our specific sectors, structures, and territories, and also be capable of establishing a collective that's capable of acting in a supply chain and also in a chain of blocks, a blockchain. where we can build a team and face these changes in the labor market. And I'll close here. Both the World Economic Forum report and the OECD remind us that within 2025, very probably, we'll have more than 85 million workers that have been completely transformed. 15% of the current professional skills will have disappeared, and 32% of professional skills at all levels, from the lowest to the highest levels, will be reorganized, retrained, and reconverted. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Federica. Certainly, many jobs will disappear. Many professionals will have to reconvert, and many jobs that we don't even have an idea of what they will be will emerge. There's two more people that would like to talk. Giorgio Verrecchia, lawyer, expert on labor law, and expert participant to this project. Good day, everyone. I like to talk a lot, so I had to take the floor. And Stefania convinced me. So maybe what I'd like to say is that we agree too much in this room. Cinzia told us, look, the path forward is well defined. The tools, we all talked about the future. Let's talk a bit about the past. The tools are the same. Bargaining. Bargaining changes its perimeter, but we talk about topics that we know very well. Co-determination of working conditions. I'll quote you again, Cinzia. Co-determination of working conditions in digital environments. Neutrality of technology. We talked about the neutrality of technology. We said that it's not neutral. Federica said, as a refined legal expert she has become, she says, look, watch out, there's an asymmetry between worker and employer, and this asymmetry doesn't allow you to have a parity during bargaining. Therefore, digitalization will enhance this disparity. The weaker part is always the worker. Trade unions are necessary to fill this gap, this weakness. And labor rights were created to fill this gap and cure this asymmetry. Now we need to add a piece, and I think it should be a statute on digital work. We need the lawmakers to intervene and say, be careful, if the right to information and consultations, which are foreseen by collective bargaining, are not being transferred to the bargaining of the algorithm, if you're incapable of using the safeguard tools. Claudia was saying this. When you hold an assembly, a referendum, how do you hold that? What's the paid leave that you give to the worker? How do you transfer that right at a digital level? So that's what we have to talk about, I think. We have to understand that we have a workers' statute, which is the implementation of our constitution basically in the labor market. We have a beautiful constitution, but this constitution was inapplicable in the workplaces. Now we need to put our constitution in the digital era. And I'm talking to you as a lawyer right now. We need to apply those freedoms that you earned and for which you have fought. You must transfer them in the digital world. Why? Well, because it's completely closed right now. And I'll mention you again, Claudia. You said, well, nice, I like the social blockchain, which is the one we developed a project upon. But be careful, because there's dangers in the other kinds of blockchain, which could potentially exclude completely a certain part of the population. So let's start talking about the things we talked in the 70s. Let's bring the workers' rights, not because I want to be an archaeologist. I'm not a case of legal archaeology, but what I want to say is that the mechanism of workers' safeguard and that mechanism that allowed us to get into the factory. Today, we need to be capable of getting into the algorithm in the digital area to safeguard the workers. So rebuild a system of safeguards and guarantees anticipating change. And this is what the topic I study right now is exactly this. What's information and consultation? Information and consultation is necessary to anticipate change. So let's do that and create the basis for a legal framework to safeguard the new employment. So safety, health, a pay that must be decent, safeguard of maternity levels, safeguards against discriminations. These are the starting points for a new digital workers statute. Thank you. Thank you, Giorgio Verrecchia. Thank you for your very interesting this comment. I'll now give the floor to Monica Zamban. She crossed all of Italy to be here today. She's the General Secretary of the PhilCamps Venice. Okay, I bring the greetings of not only the Secretary of CGIL Venezia, but also of the Chamber of Commerce. My speech will be extremely brief and practical. And in terms of what's the meaning of what we're talking and the examples I'd like to bring. In 2013, Gabriele will remember this very well, and even Stefania, we received in a summer evening a phone call from a Swiss delegation. And they wanted to come and demonstrate under the OVS in Venice. And we discovered, thanks to that phone call, I think we were talking about 300 workers, and they all came. We discovered in that situation that the OVS group, which has its legal office in Mestre, near Venezia, had closed many sales points in Switzerland. And these workers were trying to understand how to reach the central offices, etc. We immediately helped these workers, also solving a series of practical and institutional passages, such as, for example, warning the police that probably one of the roads will be blocked by a demonstration. And this was one of the first examples of what the European Trade Union can do, and how I think the work that PhilCamps and the Confederation decided to do on this topic. Another brief, let's say, comment in regard to what Guglielmi said earlier, and regarding one of the most important groups in our territory today, which is the Vuitton Group. They have the Orient Express, the train, and they also have many buildings, commercial buildings and touristic buildings. Concerning tourism, data is very clear. Bargaining is linear and aligned, let's say, to the minimum working conditions and treatment of other labor laws. But what's the challenge for other groups? How do we bargain with the company that invests so much? And what's the modality of the relationship even among ourselves as trade unionists when facing the future challenges of the world? Oh, sorry, I was keeping the mask as a... Sorry. So, as I was saying, what will the future challenges be? Well, I think we'll find a few answers within this book, this manual, that I will treasure. Thank you really very much for the work you've done. Thank you. Thank you, Monica, both for being here today and for having remembered to us how important it is to establish trade union networks that go beyond geographical and sector borders, because only together we can make the voice of workers heard. I'll now verify if somebody wants to say something remotely. If there is somebody else inside the room that would like to take the floor, you now have the possibility. All right. Well, then, I hope we haven't confused you too much. I instead hope that we have fostered some kind of new interest in the topics that we have talked about. And now, to close this day, I'll give the floor to Tania Scacchetti, Confederal National Secretary of CGIL, who I thank once more for being here today and also for having been present during the whole project. Thank you, Tanya. You have the floor. Thank you, Stefania. And thank you really to PhilCamps and the brothers and sisters that are there with you today. I'm very sorry, Stefania knows, that I was unable to be there physically, not only because, I mean, it's always a pleasure, and it will be even more a pleasure after the months that we have lived, and we hope that will never come back again, and to restart a relation of proximity with our brothers and sisters. But I'm also really sorry because this is truly a project that I'd like to say challenging. I agree, Cinzia. She was talking about an ongoing process. Well, actually, the publishing of the, I would say, the extraordinary work that you have done and that we have tried to, let's say, accompany. Well, this is a tool, like others that we have developed, that I would say is really, really important, and each trade unionist should put this book in its own toolbox. But I think it's also something more. As something more, I think, is all the work that has been done on the topic of digitalization, because maybe the first thing that I would like to underline as a, let's say, contribution to our discussion that I'm sure will continue, and therefore not as a conclusive comment. I think the biggest value, added value of this process is acquiring awareness on the importance of discussing these topics, acquisition of skills that we, let's say, normally don't have as trade unionists, but also the key factors represented by the digitalization and the influence of these processes on the working relations and the establishment of the legal and regulatory frameworks that govern our activities. Well, I think that one of the main elements that make this project extremely important, and also in all the work we've done in the last 2 years, is the internal change that will have to happen within trade unions. I think this remains one of the main issues with which we confront ourselves. Luckily, I see that the younger generations are a bit more advanced than us from this point of view. I think that the introduction that Gabriele did of you, for example, the speech when he talked about you, I found it, let's say, curious, because it's not normal to talk about the continuity of personal life in relation to the continuity of projects, therefore a professional investment. But I also found it very consistent with a idea of an approach towards trade union action which truly doesn't have rules and structures right now. It mustn't have these structures and predefined places to where relations should happen. I think that what we have learned during this project the many voices that are present in the project, the many contributions that are present, and the various points of view that have been represented, all the study that has been done on the impact of blockchain technology. Well, this is true for the manuals we have produced on the bargaining of the algorithm and artificial intelligence. Not only we have to share all this, all these different points of view, these different approaches, skills that have been acquired and that we still benefit from greatly in terms of trade union organization, but we should also perform an additional step forward and share a working modality. I believe that, for example, if we talked about the impact of blockchain technology and the things that you have already listed and Gabriele listed as well, in terms of the things that were being recognized as at an international level. So passing from theory, from an interpretation of events that is certainly necessary, and determining if you want to talk about these topics. But going from that to talk about the practical effects as how the trade union subject needs to attempt to govern these changes and not being dragged by these transformation. Well, this means that we need to change our approach in terms of trade union action. And I think we're not doing enough in terms of internal change. So these moments of exchange, even during the study of how we approach works like this, I think can be extremely important in relation to the practicing, implementing these change of organizational models and not only announcing a change, which is a very, very heartfelt topic within the organization, but very often is only expressed in theoretical terms. The second point I'd like to underline when talking about the keys that I found in the discussions I heard, and which are the most important elements, the key elements that we have to try to work on and try to orient our bargaining activities on one hand, strengthening our interventions on the rights of information and consultation. So the tool based upon which we have the necessary keys to interpret in a appropriate way data. As you were reminding us, no technological implementation is neutral, but data can be oriented in his interpretation. And this can be done in a very different ways, and the very same data taken in his quantity when inserted in a context can determine very different and varied orientations. That's why, in terms of the right of information and consultation, that sometimes we commonly call right. It's not. It's more than that. We tend to consider something that's not really inherent to the core bargaining. In fact, that's a very significant part of it. And the second key is that of transparency of algorithmic practices. I think that we should all be strong and equipped with the fact and be aware of the fact that this topic has become much more relevant, even in the eyes of the European lawmakers. Concerning the discussions that are being held on the directive for platform workers. That's a discussion that's very complex and very complicated. And the third point is participation. On this point, I also found very challenging and, as always, very interesting the speech by Federica and the lawyer Verrecchia. We must be aware, I think, that inside these big transformations that are happening in a context where we, as our trade union action, is strongly pressed by the response to the material and immediate needs of our workers. So let's say we've been living for quite a while right now in this dichotomy where we are finding ourselves in big, huge transformations that need great vision to be faced. And I also believe the construction of new utopias, trade union utopias, that's how I'd like to define them, something that can change our action and then can therefore determine a future function of social transformation that we attribute to trade union actions that has never been and can never be the only form of safeguard in contract terms or social terms of the primary needs of the people that we are representing. And when we assign to trade union roles and in the role of, with our counterparts, the ambition of being a subject of transformation, therefore a subject that's capable of orienting and reading and interpreting and governing the technological transformations and doing so by reducing the asymmetry which is inherent in the relationship between worker and employer, or in any case between workers and multinational companies and processes within which the worker is included. Well, then here we are drawing a very high role of trade unions, which is not that far from the daily activity that we perform when we try to give answers in terms of primary material needs of our the people we represent. And I'd like to underline this because the recent debate that has been held in the recent days on the insufficient level of salaries and the employment problems that finally these problems are being publicly discussed not only by politics but also by the relevant bodies. And I'd like to also underline how much effort we have put in trying to let this emerge. For years, there had also only been a numerical analysis of the employment levels. It's raising, it's decreasing, without understanding how, in terms of quality, that kind of employment was changing, and as a consequence, the social condition of the people working and that we represent. So we as trade unions have been called upon in terms of implementing a strong action and give a bargain and give answers in terms of salary and employment levels. And these are, in fact, the great democratic issue of our country. So it's also a discussion about the social cohesion of our country. Well, this is not very different. I think that we often think in terms of two separated segments, and then we have these very interesting meetings and seminars. No, I think that working conditions and salary conditions are very connected with these transformations. And as was rightly reminded earlier, these transformations are not happening inside a temporal line which is defined by a before and an after. This is happening in a magmatic transformation. It's extremely rapid, and sometimes we have a really hard time to intercept. So I agree strongly with something you were saying earlier, which is kind of the mood we always try to have in the relation with our counterparts and the lawmakers. Neither apologetic nor apocalyptic. So showing interest and having an inquisitive nature, but also a biased interpretation. We want to be biased in interpreting a technology. We want to strengthen it, govern it, so that it can be useful to reduce inequalities, not to increase them. And I'd like to, and I'll close my contribution by underlining that really the manual that we have produced will be widespread and as much as possible, so because of the value it has to change our mentality as trade unionists, and not only for that but also because of the content, which is extremely interesting, and it tells about what we do every day and also the negative interpretation that can be given of certain tools, as Claudio was reminding. So I'll close on one point, which I actually think we should talk more and in a different way. This idea of this digital workers statute, which is actually implementation and the enlargement of the idea of the Charter of Rights. So trying to imagine that the regulatory and legal activities and the lawmakers' activity should enlarge its scope and include and offer additional tools and keys. I think the topic of contact and unionization of workers that are immaterial, and that's one of their main characteristics and one of the main characteristics of their work performance. Well, this discussion, this attention should be, I think, much more backwards among the lawmakers if compared to the discussion that we as trade unionists had the last few months. Maybe in specific aspects, transparency of the algorithm, or the more emerging ones, the delivery riders' activities, working activities, but we're very, very far from a structured legal framework, which also means then a social and economic framework, because then we'll have to talk also about how to change the cities and how to safeguard people as a whole in all the various ways they perform their working activities. So how does the worker have the right to have these rights independently from his condition? This should be a legal debate, and I think the legal debate is very backwards at the moment, but also the political debate, the level of the political debate is very backwards right now. So I think this is the jump that we should do. Let's say equip ourselves with the correct tools. The moment we develop these tools, then we have to build a relation with the counterparts, be them the employers or the institutions with which we confront ourselves, because if we don't become the subject that fosters this kind of discussion, I am afraid that for a very long time we'll have to chase the effects instead of trying to determine the choices before these are taken. So I think you're all in a very beautiful place. Thank you again for having me. And I think it's really, once again, congratulations for a job very well done, and that you have accompanied with the growth of your kids, but that I think is something that can give you and PhilCAMS and the whole organization. I want to think that this is the contribution given to the whole organization, a very significant tool. Thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you, really. And I'll send you a huge virtual hug. And bye-bye from Sicily. And with the contribution of Tanya, we now close today's meeting. I'd like to say farewell to everybody. Thank you for participating, both to those in attendance and remotely, and having followed us live through our Collectiva and PhilCAMS national channels. And for those who are here in presence, there's a light lunch in the rooms of Palazzo Biscari, which is the place where you find yourself right now. Thanks again, all of you, and a special thanks to the interpreters that have made this multi-language conference possible. Thank you.